The last day of school had finally arrived. A bittersweet mixture of relief and melancholy hung in the air. As I walked through the empty halls, the echoes of laughter and chatter from the past school year seemed like distant memories. There was an eerie quietness that settled in, amplifying the creaks of the old building and the shuffling of my footsteps. I had stayed behind to finish packing up my locker, wanting to savor every last moment of my high school experience. The empty corridors felt oddly unsettling, as if the school itself was holding its breath, preparing for something unknown. With my backpack slung over my shoulder, I made my way to the front entrance, where the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the empty foyer. As I reached for the door handle, a sudden chill ran down my spine, causing me to hesitate for a moment. Ignoring the unease creeping over me, I pushed open the door and stepped outside, the warmth of the sun washing over my skin. But as I turned to take one last look at the school building, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Standing at the end of the hallway, bathed in shadow, was a figure. It was tall and slender, with long skeletal limbs that seemed to stretch impossibly far. Its face was obscured by darkness, but I could feel its eyes boring into me, cold and unyielding. A shiver ran down my spine as I watched the figure slowly raise a hand and beckon to me, its movements jerky and unnatural. Panic surged through me, and I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my chest. I sprinted across the empty schoolyard, the sound of my footsteps echoing in my ears. But no matter how fast I ran, it felt like the figure was right behind me, its presence looming over me like a dark cloud. Finally, I reached the safety of the main road, where I collapsed onto the pavement, gasping for breath. Tears stung my eyes as I struggled to make sense of what I had just seen. Was it a trick of the light? A figment of my imagination? But deep down, I knew the truth. There was something sinister lurking within the walls of that school, something ancient and malevolent that had been awakened on this final day. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the deserted streets, I knew that I couldn't ignore what I had witnessed. I had to go back, to confront whatever evil had taken root within those walls. With a sense of grim determination, I rose to my feet and turned back towards the school, my heart pounding in my chest. As I approached the entrance, I could feel the air growing colder, a tangible sense of dread settling over me like a suffocating blanket. I pushed open the door and stepped inside, the darkness enveloping me like a thick fog. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to flee from this place and never look back. But I knew that I couldn't leave without facing whatever horror awaited me. With trembling hands, I reached into my backpack and pulled out a flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness like a knife. I crept through the empty halls, my footsteps echoing off the walls, my heart pounding in my chest. Suddenly I heard a sound, a soft whispering that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. It was a language I couldn't understand, ancient and guttural, sending chills down my spine. I followed the sound, my flashlight casting long shadows across the walls, until I reached the entrance to the basement. The door stood slightly ajar, darkness seeping out from within like a malevolent force. With a sense of dread, I pushed open the door and descended into the depths below. The air grew colder with each step, a sense of foreboding weighing heavily on my chest. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I saw it, the figure from before, its form twisted and contorted, a grotesque parody of humanity. It stood before me, its eyes blazing with unholy light, its mouth twisted into a malevolent grin. I stumbled backwards, my mind reeling in terror. This was no mere specter, no trick of the light. This was something far more ancient and sinister, something that had been lurking within the shadows of this school for untold years. As the figure advanced towards me, its movement slow and deliberate, I knew that I had only one chance to escape. With a cry of defiance, I turned and fled, my footsteps echoing off the cold stone walls. I ran faster than I ever had before, the darkness closing in around me like a suffocating blanket. But just as I reached the top of the stairs, I felt a cold hand close around my ankle, pulling me back with inhuman strength. I screamed as I felt myself being dragged back into the darkness below, the figure's laughter echoing in my ears. And as the darkness consumed me, I knew that I would never escape the horrors that lurked within the walls of that accursed school. And so, dear reader, heed my warning. For if you ever find yourself walking the empty halls of a school on its final day, beware the shadows that lurk within.